Will the Ohio State Buckeyes make it to the Big Ten title game? Let's talk about it here. As obviously Ohio State has one loss on the year at Oregon. That's a huge loss, mind you. If you're looking at the Big Three right now in the Big Ten, Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, three of the top four ranked teams in college football. Those are the three best odds to make it. Oregon, obviously undefeated, 7-0. That win against Ohio State. Their schedules, I guess their toughest game is at Wisconsin. We'll talk about Wisconsin here in a few. Penn State, on the other hand, they're 6-0, 3-0. Oregon is 7-0, 4-0, by the way. Like I said, with that win against Ohio State. They still play at Wisconsin this weekend, in which I think that's going to be a really, really, really good game. Again, we'll talk about Wisconsin here in a second. And, oh, by the way, they still play Ohio State coming up here in a few weeks. They, like I said, at Wisconsin and Ohio State, two pretty tough games there. They get Ohio State at home. Ohio State, obviously, tougher schedule out of the three. They play at Oregon, already lost, and at Penn State. And oh, by the way, they play Nebraska this week, who before last week looked like a pretty tough team, especially defensively. Now, we'll talk about Indiana here in a second, but they just lost 56-7. Does anyone, and Ohio State fans, I'm asking you an honest question. Do you really think you're going to beat Nebraska 56-7? I don't. I think Nebraska caught Indiana at the worst time possible. But Ohio State plays Nebraska at home, at Penn State. I think, who do you play? At Northwestern or something? Let's see, my bad. At Northwestern, oh yeah, Purdue, before at Northwestern, Indiana, and then Michigan. So Ohio State has the toughest schedule out of the three. But still, odds like Ohio State, I think they have the highest odds still to win the Big Ten. And then we have the dark horse, Indiana. What if I told you Indiana is beating teams worse than any other team in the Big Ten, averaging 49 points per game and 13 given up? They have a plus 109 point differential in the Big Ten. This Indiana team is legit, guys. Coach C has Coach of the Year implications all over him. This defense is really, really solid. It's not amazing, to be honest with you, but their offense makes up for it. And this team is just very, very good. Indiana beat Nebraska 56-7 at home. That game was never close, mind you. I think they got up 21-0. Nebraska scores a touchdown, 21-7. That's as close as it was all game. Indiana dominated, 200 yards rushing, I think 300 yards passing. I know their quarterback went down, Roke, transfer from Ohio. Taven Jackson came in. He was a highly rated 4-star recruit, mind you. He came in, and the guy that couldn't complete a pass last year went 7 of 8 for about 100 yards and a touchdown, added 40 yards rushing. This Indiana team is exceptionally good. They are the best coached team in the Big Ten. I know that's going to upset some people, but look at this roster. Overall, you could say I think their recruiting average is in the 50s or high 40s, and yet they have a top 10 team. They are ranked 13th for no good reason. Doesn't make too much sense to me. Like I said, they're beating teams worse than any other team in the Big Ten. Point differential at 109, plus 109. That's ridiculous for this Indiana team. And look who they play. This weekend, they host College Game Day against Washington. Once again, their quarterback is out. But they have a real good rush game. They got a real good defense. I think this is going to be a solid game, but I still think Indiana wins it. At Michigan State, home against Michigan. That Michigan game is huge because Indiana hasn't beaten Michigan since when? I can't remember. And then at Ohio State, potentially the biggest game of the season for Indiana, obviously, but one of the biggest games in the Big Ten. You know who else is a dark horse team? The Wisconsin Badgers. They have found something as of late. Now they played Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern. They beat Purdue 52-6, the same Purdue team that just lost to Oregon 35-0 on the road. They beat Rutgers 42-7, in which Rutgers was a 2-point home favorite, and then Northwestern, they destroy them 23-3. They host Penn State. I'm telling you, I think this is going to be a really good game. Penn State's only a 7-point road favorite. Like I said, they have found something offensively here with Locke. I know he didn't look great against Northwestern. Northwestern's an okay team, I suppose. But they have Tywee Walker, who stepped up on the running back since Malusi had to retire, I think, or something like that, which is unfortunate. He's out for the season. But their schedule is brutal. Penn State at home, at Iowa, home against Oregon, at Nebraska, and then finishing off the season for that rivalry game against Minnesota. Obviously, Wisconsin is a dark horse for a reason. Their schedule's the toughest out of the group that the 5 that we just named. We'll talk about Illinois here in a second. But I do believe Wisconsin's going to get either Penn State or Oregon. And that game, either one that they get would be huge for the standings. And then lastly, the last thing we can really talk about is Illinois. They're 3-1 in Big Ten play, +8 in the point differential, so they're winning close games. They beat Purdue by a point, a single digit. Their best win at Nebraska. That's a huge win for Brett Bielema. 6-1. They play Oregon this week. That's a big game. The Big Ten has some really big games this weekend. Ohio State, Nebraska, Illinois, Oregon, and the biggest one, I think, Penn State at Wisconsin. Illinois is not going to make it. They would have to... Oregon is a 25-point favorite at home against Illinois. I like Illinois to cover. I don't necessarily think Oregon can beat them by 26, 27 points because the point is going to go up. But Ohio State fans, out of the 5, forgetting about Illinois, no, listen, you play at Penn State, which is going to be a really big game, home against Indiana, obviously Michigan. Now, I'm going to say this about Michigan. They are a bad team. They are a really bad team. They should not have 4 wins. They got lucky against USC, and their schedule is very favorable, obviously. But this is a Michigan team who's 108th in pass defense. They're giving up 20-something points per game. Their quarterback situation is atrocious. And, mind you, they've been owning Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't beaten Michigan since 2019. They will beat the soul and life out of Michigan. I don't think that game's going to be close. If Ohio State gets 10 possessions, they will score on all 10 of them. Doesn't matter. I don't think it's going to matter if it's 4th and 4 at their own 31. Ryan Day will go for it. He's going to try to run up the score against Michigan, and he should, in my opinion. But the 2 biggest games, home against Indiana and at Penn State. Again, we come into the season, Penn State was probably around the top 10. I thought that they would be much better than what people were saying. They found a way to beat USC on the road. However, the key to Penn State's season thus far has been Drew Aller. He has looked very, very good this year. 86.8 QBR, 11 TDs though, 4 interceptions, 3 of which came against USC. 3 bad reads, in my opinion. Now, he's not throwing the TDs. He's not going to win you a Heisman. But with these 2 very good running backs, Noah Singleton and Katron Allen, this team is going to score. They're going to score on Ohio State. I think that's going to be a really good game. And as of right now, I would actually take Penn State at an upset next week. I know that's going to upset all of you. But let's say they do beat Penn State. Then they're pretty much eyeing the Big Ten title. Oh, by the way, that Indiana team that I just named, they are beating teams worse than any other team in college in the Big Ten. Plus 35 on the season in the point differential per game. Okay, in the Big Ten play, they're plus I think 29 or some ridiculous stat like that. That's better than any other team. Oregon, mind you, is plus 19. Listen. Ellison has been really, really solid for this Indiana offense, but the surpriser, at least for me, I mean, the team is surprising, has been their defense. 13 points per game. Listen, they haven't really played any good offensive teams. The best offensive team they played is Maryland, and they pretty much controlled that game. Still gave up 28 points. They're going to score on Ohio State. I think this team's going to score in Ohio State. They run a very exceptional offense with Coach C's game plan. He had the same similar offense again last year with James Madison. James Madison could score on just about anybody, and they were a really good team last year. Potentially could have won the Sun Belt. In fact, they did win the Sun Belt. They kind of found themselves last year, James Madison losing some games they shouldn't. But I think that's going to be a very tough game for Ohio State, especially before that big Michigan game. And Ohio State would play Purdue and Northwestern, two bad teams. Those should be easy wins. But it starts this week against Nebraska. And like I said at the start of this video, do you really think Ohio State's going to beat Nebraska 56-7? I don't. I think this is going to be a relatively close game for the first half. And then Ohio State, because they're Ohio State, they have the best roster in college football, in my opinion. They're going to run away with it in the third and fourth quarter. Probably win this game like 33-10, 35-17, something. It could even be 31-0, and could be 10-0 at half. But I do expect Raiola to fix some things. Ohio State comes in as a 25.5 point favorite. I would lean towards Nebraska here. I know Ohio State just had a bye week, but still, I think Nebraska is going to compete a lot better than what they did against Indiana. Caught Indiana at the worst time possible. Indiana, the most disrespected team in college football, undefeated in the Big Ten, 4-0. They're at the top of the leaderboard. And oh, by the way, not into that top 10. I'd have them personally top 10. Then at Penn State, after a physical team in Nebraska, I don't think Ohio. Here is my final prediction. Will Ohio State make it to the Big Ten title game? Ohio State fans are going to be so pissed off with me. I'm going to say no. I think Penn State is going to beat Ohio State at home, in which a game that James Franklin has to win. The difference in Ryan Day against top 5 teams has been the fourth quarter. I've kind of already talked about this before, but Ohio State has been outscored something like 69-15 in their last 5 losses in the fourth quarter. They've given up 0 punts. Ryan Day has got outcoached in many fourth quarters, even in which games he's won. There's something about the fourth quarter, the money quarter, that Ryan Day seems to collapse in. Ohio State fans know this a little bit too much. I think Penn State has the difference, and that is Drew Aller. They're going to be able to compete on the line of scrimmage. I know Tom Allen's defense for Penn State hasn't been great, but he's going to cook up something against Ohio State. Let me be honest there. Ohio State has by far, like I said, the best roster in college football. I don't even think it's close. The skill set positions at Ohio State are better than any other team. Okay, running back, wide receiver, DB even. Come on, those are your skill set players there. Ohio State's the best at least those, in my opinion, than any other team. Offensive line's debatable. Now, Ohio State's offensive line, I don't think it's the best, but it's still serviceable and still very, very good. Will Howard is as good as he's going to be. I don't think he's better than Dylan Gabriel. Don't think he's better than Drew Aller, but he's still a really good quarterback for Ohio State. Better than Kyle McCord. I know that was really the goal there. Get a quarterback better than Kyle McCord. He is better than Kyle McCord. Point blank simple, at least in my opinion. Now, why I think Penn State's going to win? Like I said, Drew Aller's a main piece there, but I think Penn State's going to be able to run the football at Ohio State. I watched the Oregon game, and the line of scrimmage was rather equal, to be honest with you. Both offensive lines were able to get somewhat a push, but Ohio State, other than one run, had they were averaging 2.8 yards per carry. Other than Travion Henderson's big 60-yard touchdown run, or it should have been a touchdown. I think he got ran down inside the 5. Oregon had more push than Ohio State, and they were averaging about 6-7 yards per carry by the end of the game. They were averaging about 5. You got to add in the QB sacks. In fact, I don't think they actually got it. Oh, they may have had 1 sack there on Dylan Gabriel. But Jordan James was able to rush 23 times for 115 yards and a touchdown, and the yards per pass was ridiculous for Oregon. Dylan Gabriel, 10 yards per pass. I think that's going to be the key. Drew Aller isn't as good as Dylan Gabriel. He's not going to get you that 28-yard touchdown run, but he's going to make the plays through the air. that is, just, in my opinion, going to be good enough for Penn State to win. My prediction thus far is Penn State 31, Ohio State 27 in a very good game in which Ryan Day gets out-coached in the fourth quarter. So Ohio State fans, let me know how wrong I am. I was right on the Oregon game. I had Oregon winning 35-28. Oregon should have scored more than 32. But do you think Ohio State's going to make it to the Big Ten title? Of course you do. Let me know why. That's why I don't think Ohio State's going to make it. They have the toughest schedule at Penn State. Obviously, already lost that game to Oregon. Oregon's going to make it to the Big Ten title, even with one loss to Wisconsin or, I guess, Illinois. Those are the only two games I could potentially see, and I don't even think those are losable. So Oregon's going to make it. It's going to be who's that second team? Indiana, Ohio State, or Penn State? It's going to be one of those three. I'm going to take Penn State and Drew Aller to make it to the Big Ten title game. You guys let me know what you guys think. I know, like I said, Ohio State has the best odds to make it and the best odds to win it. The best odds to win, the second best odds to make it. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.